Hanky Pasanky here again. Hello. We are continuing to work on this dragon egg that we've been working on. We've seen already waxing in the scales, dyeing the area of the cut lines between the scales, and then unshown melting off the wax scales. And then there was quite a bit, unfortunately, of scraping. I ended up getting a lot of melted wax in the cut lines, which wasn't super fun, and had to dig those out. Then I did sort of stippled an all-over layer of calligraphy ink or India ink. So these colored ones, they're highly pigmented. They don't have a lot of weight to them, so it's not like putting acrylic paint on where you feel like there's a plastic covering. You can still feel the texture of the eggshell. It still feels like an eggshell with this level, with several layers even of this kind of ink. So the gold, this one's purple, so that's my base layer. Basic purple, pretty dark. Everything's gonna be pretty dark on these guys, so a lot of this work is to lighten it. So for that, I'm using a red, crimson, and an iridescent blue. What I really wanted was an iridescent purple. I couldn't find that at any of the art stores in the neighborhood, so we're doing it the hard way. We're doing it bit by bit. And what I learned playing around here, I did a couple of tries, and one was stippling on the red and then stippling on the blue separately, and then they kind of wet blend just a little bit, but to make sure that the blue is on top, because I want that iridescence on top. And then another one I tried, I paletted the red and blue together, and that ended up really red, like brick red almost. So that's not going to work so good. But I can do a little bit of red sort of as a deep color or a shadow color, and then use the blue as an accent color. So we'll start on a section that is just straight up purple. And I saw somebody using a lathe like this to do like gold leaf and accent work, which I thought was really brilliant, because if you're using, especially if you're using gold leaf and you really have to like then not touch it for a while, but sometimes you want to work around and you're doing a stripe or you're doing a panel, like a barrel panel, and you want to keep going around. You don't want to lose your continuity, but you also don't want to smudge it by putting it down on paper too soon. So you put it in the lathe to do the majority of the wrap, and then when you're done with that, take it off and then do one end and then do the other end, because by that point I'll be able to touch the middle again. So I think this is brilliant, and I'm very, very happy with it. And then I kind of just stipple it on with a really crummy old watercolor brush. Ideally, I think I have used real stippling brushes in the past. It's been a while. I've never bought one for myself. But they're very stiff, short, bristled brushes that you can use for stippling or for stenciling. It's basically the same kind of brush. But you want to have a small amount of pigment that you're working with, because you don't want to lay it on too thick. I don't want it to dribble into the low spaces. I want it to kind of stay right where I put it and not level out on its own. Okay, I'm going to come back in with a little bit more blue on these areas that are kind of dry but not really dry. And I'm focusing the blue around what would be the high points, the highlights, tips of the scales, what would be the highest point of the scales. To give them just a little bit more accented three-dimensionality. And I'm thinking that I still put too much red on on this segment. Gotta remember, these are dark. Put another dark color on top of something that's already dark and you get really, really, really dark. So this will be more of a royal purple than a lavender or girly purple. I didn't mean that, I just meant lavender. It's getting late. And then I do love that sort of mottled iridescence, which sort of makes me think of mermaid scales. So that's one little section done. And the nice thing about doing the ink work on the scales is it is one of the few times where you really can just kind of put it down, work on it for like 20 minutes and then come back. Sometimes it helps to have fresh eyes. So you can see where maybe I've started working a little bit too much of a pattern and it's gotten a little bit too nicey-nicey and a little bit too even, a little bit too clean, a little too perfect. And then I can kind of stop that, put the kibosh on it and get it a little more wild again. Okay. All right, we will come back to this.